Today I'm going to give away a free t-shirt, bring you a Comicology 101 segment, bring you comics news, and reveal the books I bought this week. How y'all doing? I'm Victor, and you are watching a Comic Hero Show. Now kick that intro! Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. It's back, folks, the Summer of Superheroes, and this is the 5th installment. In this month alone, I'm going to cover everything X-Men as part of their 60th anniversary. And on this episode, I'm showing some love to one of the 5 original X-Men, Iceman, which I'm going to touch base on a little later on. But for right now, it's time to give away a free t-shirt. Alright, on last week's episode, I asked which X-Man was the only original member on the X-Men roster in 1975. Well, the correct answer is Cyclops. And 8 people have answered correctly, and because they've answered correctly, names been entered in a drawing for a free tee. And that drawing takes place right now. So the winner of the free tee for this week's episode of the show is... Mike Alderman from Shreveport, Louisiana. So congratulations, Mike. We still have a free Comic Hero tee. Alright, here's the question for next week's episode, and this is an X-Men question. As a matter of fact, because this is the 60th anniversary of the X-Men, every question this month will be related to the X-Men. So here goes. True or false? Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were originally going to name the X-Men the Merry Mutants. Everyone who answers correctly will be entered in a drawing for a free tee on next week's episode of the show. Now, usually I would do a Comic Hero Throwdown Showdown segment, or I would do an Any Questions segment, but I'm going to save those for next month. For this month alone, again, because this is the 60th, I'm celebrating the X-Men all month long, I'm going to do a Comicology 101 segment, do a brief overview of some of the characters from past and present. And a lot of notable ones, and of course I'm gonna start off with the 5 original X-Men. So, ladies and gentlemen, class is now in session. Welcome to Comicology 101. This week, I'll be talking about the early days of the X-Men. The X-Men were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and originally consisted of 5 teenagers and their overseer, Professor Charles Xavier. Cyclops, whose real name is Scott Summers, possesses the manipulation of concussive force beams from his eyes, spatial awareness, and energy resistance. Due to a head injury he suffered as a boy, he cannot control his powers and has to wear a pair of ruby quartz glasses and a special ruby quartz visor. Marvel Girl, whose real name is Jean Grey, possesses telepathy and telekinesis. Angel, whose real name is Warren Worthington III, possesses superhuman strength, stamina and durability, flight via feathered wings and hollow bones, regenerative healing factor, and aerial adaptation. Iceman, whose real name is Bobby Drake, possesses thermokinesis, hydrokinesis, and cryokinesis. Beast, whose real name is Henry McCoy, possesses genius-level intellect, superhuman strength, stamina, durability, speed, agility, reflexes, dexterity, healing, longevity, and senses, and is a proficient scientist and engineer. The first villain the X-Men ever faced was Magneto, the Master of Magnetism. He later formed a group of mutants to combat the X-Men called the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. The X-Men were a commercial success early on, but as the 1960s came to a close, sales for the book became overshadowed by DC's books and other books within Marvel. Despite creating new characters like Havoc, aka Alex Summers, Marvel discontinued the book in 1970. That's all for now. Next week, I'll be discussing characters from the 70s and the 80s. Class dismissed. Alright, well, I hope y'all enjoyed the Comicology 101 segment. Next week, I'm going to cover members of the X-Men from the 70s and 80s. Alright, now it's time for Comically Speaking, so without further ado, let's talk comics! Alright, there are two things I'm going to talk about in this segment of Comically Speaking. Here's the first. Hey everyone, now before I go on with Comically Speaking, I want to bring up another X-Man, and that's the first X-Man to ever go from cartoon to canon. And I'm talking about Firestar. Now, Firestar was originally created for the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends animated series that premiered on NBC in 1981. And she was created by Dennis Marks, Dan Spiegel, Christy Marks, John Romita Sr., and Rick Hoberg. Now, they created her for two reasons. One, there was already a bevy of original Marvel characters on the show. In addition to Spider-Man, Iceman, and Aunt May, they also had other characters like J. Jonah Jameson, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, Electro, the Kingpin, Loki, the Shocker, the Sandman. I could just go on and on. And so, because they had and because of this, they were under a budget, and they didn't want to use a lot of original characters. So they decided, and then also they wanted to do this in an effort to make the Spider Friends diverse. So they created her, and from the jump, she became an instant success. And really loved this character, and I mean, I loved her on there, and I wasn't the only one. I mean, there were a lot of viewers and and then just about everyone at Marvel Comics loved her so much that 4 years later, after Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends went off the air, she became comics canon. And she made her first appearance in the Uncanny X-Men number 193 in 1985, and this version was developed by Chris Claremont, Tom DeFalco, and John Romita Jr. Now, her powers are the ability to generate and manipulate microwave radiation, allowing her to fly and create intense heat and flames. Now, throughout her time in comics, in addition to being a member of the X-Men, which she's currently doing now, she's also been a Hellion, a New Warrior, an Avenger, and a Young Ally. Now, in terms of comics, I really loved her with her short time as an Avenger. She did very well then. And then I read her again when she was a member of the Young Allies, and I'm very excited that she's an X-Man again, and she is killing it so far in the pages of this book. So I decided to show some love to her, and I'm doing so with this Firestar Comic Hero tee. And if you would like one of your own, you can find them on my website, IamTheComicHero.com, for $17. Now, a few days ago, at Sinlock Collector Con in Marksville, I met a lot of great people, and two of them were two comic book creators who had their own publications and are both out of New Orleans. One is Daniel Johnson, who has Risen Vision, and then Joe Mexican, who has Dark Atom Studios. And I told him, hey, I will read your books. And so I bought these books. Well, really, I bought one off of Daniel, but Joe just gave it to me. And I told him I would go ahead and read them, and I'm going to unveil them right now. So here they are. First up is Saint God's Warrior number 1. And Dopesback number 1. All right, with those two, that brings the total number of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 12,090. Now, this past weekend, I was a vendor at the 3rd annual Sinlaw Collector Con at the Earl J. Barbary Senior Convention Center in the back of the Paragon Casino Resorts in Marksville, Louisiana. And let me tell you, I had a wonderful time there. Met some awesome people. Ended up with 8 new YouTube subscribers. I mean, it was one of the best days ever. Now, I didn't sell a lot of merch, but you know what? That's fine. Because sometimes you have to make fans out of people first. And I feel very, blessed to have met all these great people. Which brings me to my second thing. Now, while I was there, as y'all saw in the mystery pop-up segment, the 2 books, Saint God's Warrior and Dope Smack. Well, I ended up reading these books, and let me tell you, you probably see the poker chips here, so you probably know what's going to happen for those of y'all that have been watching for a while. I love both books. Now, Dope Smack is the book by Joe Mexican. It's part of his publication called Dark Atom Studios, and then Saint God's Warrior is part of Daniel Johnson's publication called Risen Vision Comics. Both of them are out of New Orleans. They're both New Orleans boys, and I'm just going to go through an overview of both books. Now, starting off with Saint God's Warrior, it's the story of this sword that's buried deep under a church in New Orleans and has been buried in there for centuries. Then in the early 70s, these 2 brothers end up finding the sword. God had this is a Christian comic, by the way. God had charged them to do it, but he said, well, whatever you do, do not wield it. I'm going to find someone for you. I need you to find this person. So they find this person who they thought was the perfect candidate to wield the sword. We find out that wasn't true, and they betrayed them years later. So, and not only that, the person that betrayed them ended up killing one of the 2 brothers. So what happens is that 21 years later, the other brother is waiting patiently to find the new person to wield the sword. So what happens is that we see this kid named Derek, and he's going through a rough time. His mother had just passed months earlier, and so he's been making poor decision after poor decision. But then he gets back, then he snaps out of it and realizes that's not going to bring her back, and that's not going to ease any pain. And his father is going through a rough time as well, and so one of the 2 brothers, the one that survived, said, look, I heard God say, look, I want you to go to the grocery store and look for some milk, which is what Derek's father had sent him to do. And so what happens is that they meet each other, but then somehow Brandon, who's the guy that betrayed the brothers, he sends one of his henchmen to that same grocery store, and then tries to fight tries to fight one of the brothers. The brothers isn't having it. He retreats, but little did we know was that that one of the henchmen ended up going to Derek's house and kidnapping his father. And so he goes to one of the brothers. He say, look, my father's been kidnapped. So the brother goes after him. I think the brother's name is Luke. Yes, it's Luke. And so he goes after him, and then he tells him, look, give him back. He has nothing to do with this. And then Brandon tells him, too bad. And then, but before Luke ended up leaving, he told Derek, I want you to meditate. So he did meditate, and then all of a sudden God had showed up and then gave him the full, Jesus shows up and he gives him the full armor of God. And then Derek goes down there and he starts tearing folks limb from limb. He didn't get to Brandon. Brandon ends up disappearing, then he, Luke, and then Derek's father end up leaving. But then we find out that that's not the end of the story. So, kudos to you, Daniel Johnson. Kudos to the great artwork, the great writing, the great everything. I mean, Daniel, you killed it. And you know what? I'm definitely going to buy the second issue. Straight up. So as soon as I do this episode, I'm buying number 2. So wait for me. All right, and also in the book Dope Smack by Joe Mexican, this takes place in New Orleans as well. And Dope Smack kind of reminds me of Batman. The only difference is this character can fly, and he's not rich. As a matter of fact, his father was a drug dealer. He was a drug dealer who ended up on the raw end of business, and it costed him his life, and it also cost him the life of Dope Smack when he was a little boy. But then Dope Smack dedicates his life to taking down bullies left and right. And there's also a movie adaptation of this that stars Joe Mexican and John Schneider. Now, for those of y'all who don't know who John Schneider is, you're probably familiar with a lot of characters that he's played. He played Bo Duke on the Dukes of Hazzard, the original series that ran from 79 to 85, and he also played Jonathan Kent on Smallville. He plays a police detective. I don't know if he's a detective or a commissioner, but he's for the New Orleans Police Department, and I guess he's kind of like another Commissioner Gordon. I mean, he is to Dope Smack what Commissioner Gordon is to Batman. And honestly, I think this is a great book also. So guys, I always do this when I talk about a brand new book, whether I've read it or not. I'm all in for the next issues. And I'm encouraging each and every one of y'all that that are watching, pick up these books. Go on risenvision.org and then darkadam.com and order these books. I mean, y'all will not be disappointed at all. All right, that's it for Comically Speaking. Let's get to the comics I bought this week. Comic books I bought this week. All right, here we go. First up is Action Comics number 1055. The Amazing Spider-Man number 26. Captain America Symbol of Truth number 13. Really excited about this book. Carnage Reigns Alpha. Deadpool number 7. Detective Comics number 1072. Doctor Strange number 3. Edge of Spider-Verse number 2. Green Arrow number 2. Justice Society of America number 4. Power Girl Special. Radiant Pink number 5. Silver Surfer Ghostlight number 4. Static Shadows of Dakota number 4. Thor number 34. Tim Drake Robin number 9. And finally, Unstoppable Doom Patrol number 3. Alright, that's 17, which brings the total number of comics that I've bought since December of 1997 to 12,107. Alright, well, I hope y'all enjoyed this week's episode. Here's a question again for a free tee for next week's episode of the show. True or false? Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were originally going to name the X-Men the Merry Mutants. Everyone who answers correctly will be entered in a drawing for a free tee on next week's episode of the show. And congratulations to Mike Alderman, who won a free tee on this episode. Alright, now Iceman is my pick for one of the 5 original X-Men because he's one of my favorites. I've always had this fascination with the character dating back to Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I used to watch old episodes of it growing up. And then there was this one episode of the X-Men series from the 90s where he guest starred on. And then my uncle, for a Christmas gift back in 1992, it was either 1992 or 1991. Well, he ended up buying me a copy of the first issue of the X-Men series that debuted in 1991. That was written by Chris Claremont with art by Jim Lee. And Iceman was part of that as well. Really loved this character, and I thought this character was at its best in the early 2000s, and that was when Marvel went through that period where they were where hardly none of them wore masks, and they were wearing street clothes. And Iceman, well, Marvel showed that Iceman can even control his powers when he's not in ice form, and I think that was like the ultimate Iceman right there. And really love this character. And then now you're probably wondering, what does thermokinesis, cryokinesis, and hydrokinesis mean? Well, what that means is that he can take the moisture out of the air and turn it into ice, and then he can make it into any shape that he wants, and he can also turn his entire body into ice. And he's also an omega level mutant. In other words, he can do all that with his powers and so much more. He can even make himself into a giant ice monster. He's done it several times in the comics as of late, and he's even taken down a few Sentinels. But yeah, definitely my pick for one of the 5 original. Now here's the road ahead for the show. On next week's episode, I'm going to show some love to the first black member of the X-Men, and one of the X-Men that made their debut in the groundbreaking Giant Size X-Men number 1 in 1975, Storm. And then I'm going to show some love then on episode 440, I'm going to show some love to a character that was made a member in Giant Size X-Men number 1 in 1975, but did not make their first appearance in that book. This character is considered one of the most popular characters of the X-Men, the face of the X-Men, the best at what he does, Wolverine. And then on episode 449, I'm going to show some love to Louisiana's favorite mutant, Gambit. You know, I get really excited whenever I do Summer of Superheroes, and this month is all dedicated to the X-Men. And then I'm going to go back and show some love to some DC characters. One of them is going to be Steel, because this year marks the character's 30th anniversary. He appeared in the pages of Superman, the Man of Steel, is created by Louis Simonson and John Bogdanove, and he was one of the 4 characters that took up the mantle of Superman after Superman was presumed dead. And after Superman came back from the dead, he christened the character Steel. And I'm going to wear a comic hero tee in observance of that, so stay tuned. Again, I get really excited when I do summer superheroes. This has been a summer staple on the show since 2019, and I'm going to keep doing it until I'm physically unable to. All right, if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, welcome. And as soon as you're done, hit subscribe. And if you're watching this on the Comic Book Lovers Facebook page, welcome. And as soon as you're done, go on YouTube and hit subscribe. All right, I'm Victor Nolly on A Comic Hero. I'll see you next week for episode 447. So until then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero.